Welcome everyone, and I'll hand over to Jim to tell us all about the Jim's Franchise Group.
Yeah, good morning. Good to see you. Well, not see you, actually, most of you. I thought I'd start by talking a bit about how I got into business, because in a way it's a situation that's being looked at by many of you. I went to university in 1971, and my whole purpose was to be an academic. I was interested in finding out about the theory of society and history and so forth, and I did a bachelor's degree, an honours degree, and then I went and did a PhD. And I was an absolute fanatic about this subject. I used to work enormous hours. I used to work weekends. I just was really, really determined to do this. And my whole concept was to become an academic, to be a teacher at a university. I never thought about anything else as a career. Now, the only thing I used to do, because obviously I needed a bit of money, I used to go out and do some gardening and then started mowing lawns for a bit. That was just for money. It was pretty good hourly rate. It was outside, and I liked being outside. So it was that. But I can tell you, not in a million years did I ever think this was going to be anything to do with my career. Now, what happened is I did my honours degree, then I did my PhD. It took a long, I kept on extending it, went sort of supposedly part-time. It took ages and ages. And it got to the stage of 11 years after I went to university in 1982, this was, that I realized I hadn't a hope in hell of achieving what I wanted, of becoming an academic. Basically what happened is my ideas, my way of looking at society and history was so wildly different to anything that was in academia that I had no prospect of a career in that area. There was no prospect of a job. Nobody was going to employ me. They wanted, I was supposedly in history, but I was, most of what I was doing then was to do with things like cross-cultural anthropology and even zoology. So it was way out. In practice, what I really wanted was to run a research institute, but of course I had no money. So what I did then, and this was during 1982, I decided to, I really had to make a living some way, and I was just about to get married too. And I didn't know how to do anything. The only thing I knew how to do besides being a failed academic was to mow lawns. So that's what I did. And this was in December 1982, just before Christmas. And I was actually in not a good financial situation. I was deeply in debt. I owed about $35,000. I had a bit of very old equipment, mower, brush cutter, and a battered old trailer to start with. Just to get going, I had to find enough money to do some marketing campaign, which was $24. And that was just to do some instant printing and some electroset. Those of us who are old enough to remember, we know what that is, to make a little brochure. And I went around sticking it in letterboxes. That's the start of my business in December 1982. It was probably about the worst time you could imagine to start a business. First of all, because we were in a recession at that time. And secondly, because we just got hit that month with the worst drought in Melbourne history, and every lawn in Melbourne died because you weren't allowed to water them. It was forbidden by law to water lawns. So that's my situation. Knowing nothing about business, little part-time gardening business. What made it even worse was that about a week after I started, just after Christmas, all my equipment completely crapped up, my mower and my brush cutter. So I didn't even have that. I had to go and buy some new stuff. And it was really difficult. But I guess the thing what it was, I was so determined to be successful. I just worked really, really, really hard. And from morning till night and Saturdays and stuff, I always try not to work on Sundays. And I managed to get through it. It was a real struggle. At the beginning, I got to the stage where, I didn't even know at the end of the month where I could make my rent, and sometimes it was a few days over late, or whether I could pay off these bills. And my parents were guarantor. I couldn't even go bankrupt. So it was just immensely challenging and tough. But I pushed through it. And I got through that first summer. I did everything I needed to. I did gardenings, I did blackberries, I did anything I could. I even did organize a watering service. I did all kinds of things to get going. And then the end came and the rains came back and the grass started to grow, and things got easier. And so I started to build this business of mine. Now, again, at that time, I didn't think it was going to be anything long-term, permanent. I was just looking for something to do to make a living until my real opportunity came up, whatever that would be. But then it just kept on growing. I actually found after a while that I could make more money by building up and selling lawn mowing rounds. And sorry, I could make more money selling lawn mowing rounds than I could actually mowing lawns. So I started to employ subcontractors to do that. And I developed, and again, I tried all kinds of things on the side. I tried running a computer shop, a mower shop. There's a few other things, all the time looking for what was be my real career. And none of that happened. So I had this little niche business just running away during the 90s. The recession was great for us. That's one thing people so don't realize. The early recession actually meant that there was a lot of people interested in doing this kind of thing. So it was easy to sell lawn mowing rounds. And then got to the stage where I was just comfortably running this business. And then this company called VIP came in. And this was in the late 80s. And VIP was, they actually terrified me. They really did. This was a company that was already franchising lawn mowing. They were based in Adelaide, and I knew about them sort of, but I thought they're not going to affect me. But then they came to Melbourne and they started competing. At that time, they had 250 franchisees. I had about 6 or 8 subbies, and I was doing this little business of building up and selling lawn mowing rounds. I was so lacking in confidence of myself that I actually rang up the state manager, a guy called David Mitchell, and said to him, I don't want to compete with you guys. I just want to help you to build VIP in Victoria because, you know, obviously you're too good for me. And he said, well, no, thanks. We don't really need your help. So I thought I might as well just see what they were doing to see if there's any way I could get into this thing. And they were very impressive. They had all this stuff. They had all these brochures and they had all these trailers and signed trailers and logos and an office in South Melbourne, all this fancy stuff. And it was way over my head. And what I did is I went to the expo that year, which was in the exhibition buildings in Melbourne. And I took off the badge they used to give you at the door. And I went up to the stand and I said to the guy who was there, I'm really interested in VIP. Can you tell me about it? And fortunately, he didn't ask me why I want to know because I'm very bad at telling lies. So I would have told him, but he didn't ask me. So he spent 15 minutes telling me about VIP and gave me this little brochure. And then the state manager, David Mitchell, came in and he said, that's Jim Penman. Don't tell him anything else. So they kicked me off the stand. But I went away and, you know, I was quite excited because I could see there were benefits to what VIP was doing. I could sort of understand why you could be part of a group and join advertising and looking after each other if you got sick or you broke your leg, which is a big problem in the mowing business because if you break your leg, 6 weeks, you lost all your customers. So I could see the benefit. But when I looked at it, I thought, well, I reckon I could develop a system which would be more favorable to the franchisees. And this was a very core attitude of mine because the one thing I had about business, I knew nothing about business when I started, but I was really fanatical about customers. I really, really, really hated letting customers down. I wanted to do the best possible job in the least time. And that's why I was so successful. Even in bad times, I picked up so much work. I kept on getting referrals and go through a once-off job and becomes a repeat. So I had this. So I thought, okay, if you're going to be a franchise, you got to have the same attitude. So I decided I was going to develop a system that would be so good that you'd have to be mad not to join it. That's the kind of attitude I had. So I spent, actually, the hardest thing the next 9 months was arguing with lawyers because they kept on wanting to do a contract which would give me all the power. And I said, no, if I was going to be a franchisee, I want my franchisees to have this power. And so I just kept on arguing with them. I had to change lawyers in the midst. It took me 9 months to get a basic contract. I looked at the contract done by VIP, didn't like it at all. I thought it was unfair, undecided. I don't want to knock them. They were very successful, but I wanted something that was more that I want to join. And then in the mid-1989, I launched gyms and I put a whole stack of stuff in it, which was very unusual. For example, I guaranteed my franchisees that I'd never take customers off them without their consent, which is something other companies used to do. They go in, they say, oh, you've got some customers in my area, we'll take them off you, give them somebody else, and here's the payment. And there was a whole stack of different protections that they had in that initial contract, like automatic renewal. At the end of 10 years, they could renew their contract as long as they're compliant with no questions. I couldn't stop them. So I put all these protections in there. Absolute right of first refusal for territory, the whole stack of things that I thought I would like. I actually asked some of the people I wanted to be my founders, the people who bought lawn mowing runs off me in the past, and some of my best subbies, the really good ones. And I gave them the contract and I said, what do you think? And they came up with quite a few changes. So I changed those things. So I had the best contract I could. So I launched in mid 1989. At that time, somebody said to me, he said, this was something with the media. He said, if it's really successful, how well do you think you could do? And I said, well, if it really works well, one day, and I'm not saying I'll achieve this, but one day I could have 100 franchisees. For those who don't know, we're just approaching 4,000 right now and growing fast. So I wasn't that optimistic about the whole thing, was I? I really had no clue what I had. And I just started. Now, and I had one weapon, though, that was really, really powerful, though I didn't quite know at the time. When I used to sell lawn mowing rounds, the way I used to do it was I would do everything possible to look after the person who bought the lawn mowing round. I would actually give them advice before they started. I had a little brochure called How to Buy or Build a Lawn Mowing Business. I gave to them in advance when they first came to talk to me. And I always gave them advice. I used to throw free lunches. If they wanted to get out, I'd show them how to do it. I'd maybe even buy their business back off them at a better price. I did everything I could. And on the board behind me, I used to stick a little white card about that size with their name in black text and their phone number. And I stuck them on the board. And then if anybody wanted to buy a business off me, I'd say to them, well, look, why don't you talk to some of the people who bought from me already? So they'd pick somebody with a local phone number or a few people, and they'd ring them, and they'd say, Jim's great. Jim's wonderful. He does everything he says. He's always ready to help. So that was my system for selling lawn mowing rounds, which was very successful. So when I started mowing lawns as a franchise system, I did the same thing. I just had a list of all my names and phone numbers of all my franchisees. And this was 20 years before the code of contact, so nobody else did this. And if anybody come to me and they'd say, well, why should I buy from you? You're running your business from your basement, which is, and these people have got a fancy office in South Melbourne, and they got more franchisees than you, and they got all this stuff, and they're interstate, and so why would I buy from you? And I said, well, there are some differences, and I never knocked the opposition. I do respect them, I still do. But here's a list of my franchisees. I want you to bring them, as many as you can, all of them if you can, and ask them what Jim's is like. And then, and here I was being a bit sneaky, I would say, well, and go and ask VIP for their list, because I knew they wouldn't give it to them, because they couldn't, because they didn't have this fanatical attitude that my customers, my franchisees have to be successful. So I did that, and I launched, and I have to say, they absolutely floored me, the success. By the end of my first year, I had 60 franchisees, 60. People were starting to come from interstate, which I had no idea of. When they first did the contracts, they had two companies, Jim's Mowing Victoria and Jim's Mowing Australia. And I said, what do you want two companies for? And they said, in case you want to go interstate. And I said, I can remember the words, I said, don't be ridiculous. This is a lawn mowing business. So it started to grow, this thing. It started to grow. I made some stupid mistakes. You would not be comprehending how dumb I can be at times. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. She'll tell you in spades all the dumb things I've done. And one of the things I did do was only charge half as much as I needed to run the business. Somebody actually came in and had a look at it and said, oh, you'd be great as long as you got twice as many franchisees. And I said, but I'm twice the support system. It was very elaborate. I was doing things like I was finding out where they wanted to work and what suburbs they wanted to work in. It's all computerized now, but in those days it was very manual. We had a literal blackboard. People would ring in and get their jobs, and then we'd flip on. It was really, really basic. It was costing me a fortune. But anyway, I had to go back to my franchisees after the first few months and say, look, guys, I'm running broke. This is the situation. If you don't agree to double your fees, we're out of business. And they agreed, because they knew I was in it for them, and I looked after them. And by the way, that level of fees has still been with CPI is the same as we charge now. So they had trust in me, they believed in me. And it started to grow, this thing. It started to grow. Some of my first franchisees wanted to go interstate. One of my best ones, a guy from Northcote called Phil Maunder actually went over there and to Adelaide, and then I realised eventually that I wasn't giving such good support to people far away. So I rang him up one day and said to him, "Look, would you like to take the regional franchise rights for South Australia?" And he said, "Oh, all right. How much?" I said, "Oh, 10 grand." So that's what we did, and he proved to be successful. So then I started putting regional franchisors in every area, and it started to grow. And I just have to say again, I didn't think, and nor did anybody else, that this thing would come to very much, because apart from anything else, in the early 90s, we went into a recession, a pretty severe recession, as some of you may remember back then. This was the Keating recession, the recession we had to have when they used it to crack down on inflation, but basically raising unemployment. So it was a very traumatic time for Australia. So you'd think it was a pretty bad time for me, but actual fact it wasn't, because the wonderful thing that happened in those days is that other people were being thrown out of work, and especially very good quality people with ambition, people with business skills. And like the State Bank of Victoria actually collapsed at that time, and it was merged with the Commonwealth. All these bank managers, great people, great business skills, and they started coming in. And the point about that was that what we were offering was not just a scratch of living on the minimum wage. I have a basic system now. If somebody comes to me with a franchise idea, the first thing I would ask them is, okay, can you prove to me that you can make at least $60 per hour? And that was the equivalent in those days too. We used to charge. So in other words, if my franchisees can't make plausibly at very least the average wage in Australia, it's not worth going into. So I had a system that was designed to be very favorable to those kind of people. So just for example, I have a system. Most franchise systems give you one area, or you can have one trailer, or you can have one site. I actually set up a system where there was no limit. You could have as many trailers and as many vehicles as you liked, and you still pay the same basic fee. There was a small lead fee, but most of the fee was the same. So we've got franchisees now turn over literally in the millions of dollars, and their base fee is still about $500 per week. Per month, I should say per month. So it was designed to be favorable to people who were ambitious. So we actually not only allowed them, we encouraged them to grow their business. It gave them a great deal of power. In later years, we actually gave our franchisees more power than we had in the beginning. We actually gave them the right to vote out their franchisors, the right to change to a different franchisor if they weren't happy, and also the right to veto changes to the manuals. And we kept on giving franchisees more power. And so this thing was just successful. It just took off, and the franchisors were giving good local support. And the fact that we were in a recession was actually a benefit. In fact, the best year we ever had, we grew from 1,000 to 1,400 franchisees in a single year. And that was because of the recession. Because what we had was a system that could provide work even when the rest of the economy was looking bad. So people who had ability, people who had nous, people who had drive could come to us, and we had work for them. Now, it wasn't always easy to find. In those days, I had canvassers knocking on doors, but we could always get people busy, and we had some fantastic people. And a lot of them went on to build major businesses. They become franchisors. And some of my earliest franchisors have become multi-millionaires because somebody bought the rights to New South Wales, I think, for $50,000. I mean, that's actually now worth on a reasonable market basis, something like $4 or $5 million. That's what happened when they were successful. So, and we went from there. It's, in a sense, we're in a situation now very similar to that. The big difference is this. Right now, back in the early 90s, we did struggle to some extent to find work. Right now, during this latest crisis, we've actually found the level of leads have risen dramatically. It's a very strange recession from our point of view. We've actually, the leads so far this year, during the crisis period, like months like June, July, and so forth, they're up about 20% over last year. And what makes this even more extraordinary is that even before that, even before the recession hit, we have massive numbers of unserviced leads. Last year alone, we knocked back more than 180,000 leads. more than 180,000 people, which is about, it's approaching 30% of all leads we were knocking back even before this latest thing hit. So our business is extraordinarily resistant to a downturn. Now, I don't even know why that's the case, to be quite honest. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. One of the things they say is, well, you can't go out, you can't go on holidays, you can't go to restaurants. If you're not going out, you're not going to buy clothes. What are you going to spend your money on? Well, we've got services. So that's my theory, and I really don't comprehend it. But I guess that the point I'm making is that we are now in an extraordinary situation, because not only have our leads gone up 20%, but franchise inquiries have gone up, and especially the really business-like, great quality people that we are wanting to and need, and particularly the people who are interested in building major businesses, people who want to put on workers and put multiple vehicles, people who want to become franchisors, people who want to start new divisions. We're starting about 2 new divisions just in the next couple of months. We're going to be launching a couple of new divisions in things like paving and security doors. So what we've got in this recession, look, I don't want to sound harsh. I know it's really awful for so many people, particularly in this industry like yours, and I really feel for that. I honestly do. And the people who've been thrown out for the hospitality and restaurants, and there's some great people, and it's been very sad for them. But would I sound too callous if I said for us it's been the best thing that could have happened to us, because we're getting the quality franchisees that we so badly need? We weren't declining in the previous years. We just weren't growing as fast as we wanted to. This year we'll probably grow 10, 15%. It's going to be extraordinary. I guess one thing I wanted to say, and I'm open to questions after this, but people have this attitude that, and everybody, even my kids, has attitudes. You've got to finish your school and go to university and get this professional job, and then you've got to sit in front of a computer and do some management type job, and it's got to be all brain work and high tech. And people have this idea that that's where the future is. But in fact, there's a wonderful book called The Millionaire Next Door. It's about America, but it's very applicable. And it actually asked the question, which people hadn't asked before, is what is the typical millionaire like? Who is the typical American millionaire? And you might think they're business executives and tech gurus and stuff, but they're not. They're actually people like me and my franchisees and my best franchisees and my franchisors, people involved in the service industry, people who've learned how to use this industry where there's this tremendous amount of demand. And I have to say, one of the problems that I see is that people have this prejudice against working with their hands, against manual work. I think this is very foolish, and I feel very fortunate, very blessed that I just love doing this kind of stuff. I love being outside. Even now, I spend several hours a week working outside in the open air, just doing physical work. I really, really enjoy that. And that's been the secret. Because other things that I've tried, like I tried it up in a computer shop, I was a complete failure. But in the service industry, it's not that competitive. And the kind of people that are, we have so many stories. And if you actually go on our website, www.jims.net, and have a look at some of the stories in there, you'll find a young person without qualifications going out. Within 3 years, he's making like $500,000 a year profit from nothing. And just some of the stories. There is so much opportunity in this area. So that's probably really all I want to say in advance. It's to me it's the most overlooked potential. And I would suggest to anybody too, if you have any interest in this sort of thing, or any franchise at all, there's one thing that you should do, is to ring up as many people as possible. Get a list of every franchisee, or in our case, if you're interested in a regional franchise, every franchisor, and ring as many of them as possible and ask them, what's it like? What's the system like? What's it like? Don't believe what anybody tells you. Listen to everybody, of course. But if you want to know what to do, you need to talk to the people who basically, in our sense, they're our frontline clients. In fact, if anybody gets an email from me, you'll see a little 3-part thing at the bottom. Our first priority is the welfare of our franchisees. We are also passionate about customer service. We choose only franchisees and franchisors we are convinced will succeed, which is part of our selection policy. So our whole aim is to treat our franchises as valuable customers. And if you want to become a franchisee, that's where you'd be, but also if you wanted, and I know many of you have got, the reason I say this is because many of you will have quite exceptional business skills, management skills particularly, and so forth, or you've done a lot of disciplined work to get to where you are. Many of you may well be interested in the higher level, joining a division, becoming a franchise, or even starting a new division. Who knows what might interest you, but there are incredible potential. I mean, just look at someone like Haider Hussain, who's one of our success stories. When he came to us, this guy was a cleaner. He was actually pushing a mop around a building. He's now multi-millionaire. He's got like 800 franchisees in the clean division. He's fantastic. Sharon Connell used to be, she was actually a hospital administrator. She came in, bought a cleaning franchise. Originally wasn't going to do it because she felt that, I didn't want to become a cleaner, but she did. She actually got my book. And in fact, that was what convinced her, because she liked the views of it. And she went out and she started being a cleaner. And then later on, she bought a regional franchise. And then she was incredibly successful as a franchisor. She's now got the dog wash division, which is doubled since she took it over. It's got 100. We expect to have 200 franchises by the end of the year. And just the opportunities are amazing. So look, I probably said enough, but any questions? Anybody anything like to ask me?
Hey guys, if you want to put in the chat box, if you're more comfortable doing that, or if you can ask to be on mute, you can ask Jim yourself. I'll open it up for a couple of minutes. Don't be shy.
Joel, I might start it off, and I was actually really surprised at how many of the different types of franchise, for example, pool and the dog washing. Can Jim maybe talk through the different types of franchise areas that you have?
Well, going back in history, when I first started off, it was a mowing. It was Jim's mowing. That was all there was. I saw the opportunity to do different things with our franchising contracts and so forth. But I felt that this mowing logo of ours is a guy with a beard and a hat. And by the way, for those who don't realize it, it's me. I just taken the beard off and I got a lot older, but I don't wear a hat these days, but it was me. But I thought that it wouldn't work. The brand would not work for any division. So we actually started trying it for cleaning. And I had this little logo called Sunlight, S-U-N-L-I-T-E, with little sprays and stuff. And I sold a couple of franchises and we really couldn't get work. So I basically gave the guys their money back and said, it doesn't work for anything except mowing. And then somebody approached me and they said, what about Jim's cleaning? And I said, no, Jim's cleaning. Jim's is a mowing image. It's the guy with a looks like a garden. That's what it looked like when I was mowing lawns. And they said, we think it'll work. And I said, no, it won't. And they said, we're so convinced we'll give it a try ourselves. We'll do it. We'll take the risk on it. I said, okay, well, have a go. So they took out Jim's cleaning and they go to a real estate agent and they say, oh, from Jim's cleaning. Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, Jim's like the mowing. Oh, yeah, okay, we'll give you a try. So it worked. So we started launching different divisions. And the strange thing is that actually the brand, it's a bit like Virgin, which if you think about it, was originally a record shop, I think, or record label, record shop. And now it's airlines and cola and everything else. So it's it just extends itself, and the Jim's brand doesn't. We have divisions like dog wash and bookkeeping, which are mainly women, and they still work under the Jim's mowing brand, the same brand as Jim's. So we've now got close to, I think it's about over 50 divisions. Some of them are very successful, like what's our best cleanings? The clean group division's got like 800, test and tag 180. And by the way, no reason why test and tag should be so successful, except we had some very brilliant leadership internally. Started from nothing, started from one guy, husband and wife team, but it's great. We now, building inspections is the biggest building inspection company in the country. What else is, obviously dog wash is doing very well.
We have pool care on. Brett Blair's actually on watching. We have
pool care. Can't forget pool care. A lot of it, by the way, if you look at which divisions work, it's got nothing to do with the division. I mean, mentioning pool care as an example, it was started up in the early days. It didn't do very well. It had about 20 franchisees. That's as far as I can get. It was stymied there. And then obviously the person in charge wasn't doing very well. The person driving what we call the divisional franchisor wasn't doing so well. So we eventually persuaded him to sell to this young whippersnapper called Brett Blair, who looks like a surfie. He really does. And he's just a great leader. So now, under his leadership, it's grown to something like 120 franchisees and growing fast. Again, it's not so much the division itself, but who's there. So we have so many different divisions. There's almost something for everybody. And if people come up with new ideas all the time, we look at them very carefully. And if they have opportunities, we can launch a new division. But so much about it is just leadership. I mean, we can do anything. We've got computer services, which is the division that really needs a look at to see why it's not taken off like others have. There's bookkeeping, there's pest control, there's skip bins, there's all kinds of antennas is quite successful too. We're getting into security. We're just launching a division just right at this moment. In fact, it's going out in the next couple of weeks called Jim's Gutter Clearing, which is sort of a sub part of the mowing division. So there's just so many different things that we can do, and there's really no limit. I'd like to have one day Jim's doctors, mobile doctors, go into the health things like physios and so forth. We've got something over 50 divisions. We could have probably 250 different divisions.
Now, so we've got a question on the chat, Jim,
yes.
From Fabrice has gone, to start a franchise, what amount of money would you need to allocate? So that depends on the division, Fabrice, but do you want to give us some guidance around pricing?
Can vary very, very greatly. At the top level, if you want to buy an established business with customers, it could be six figures. Like for something like an established six test and tag franchise, a mowing franchise would probably, with equipment and training, set you back around about $30,000. But there are other opportunities too. Divisions like fencing, which are desperate for leads. Might sound an odd thing to do, but of all the divisions, fencing is the one with the most. It's about 60% of the work is unserviced, and it's a great one for building teams. And they're even less. There's a training program, but the franchises themselves are relatively costly because we just need people so badly. You know, people can buy a franchise for as little as like $15,000. It just depends. And by the way, almost anybody's got a good credit record can get a loan, because it's so tiny by the comparison with the actual earnings.
Any more questions, guys? If you want to put them in the chat or jump on?
How about Jim's? You know what the common saying is, if you want to make a small fortune in the airline business, start with a large fortune. Yes, I feel for your industry, I really do. I'm not a great flyer, I must admit too. I'm not somebody who enjoys airplanes a lot, but I understand it's a great industry to be part of. One thing we've learned very hard is that we're not good at everything. We're very, very good at what we do. I mean, just to give you an illustration of how good we are, and I'm not boasting, this is just standard statistics. If you look at people going into service businesses like cleaning and gardening, the failure rate in the first year is between 90 and 95%. And I'm not making this up. This is just standard. You can look at it, things like the Cleaning Janitorial Service Association in America, which is about cleaning. That's around about statistics they give. Our first year failure rate is around about 10.5 to 11%. And not all those are failures. Some of them go independent, or they get offered a job somewhere else or something like that. But that's the number of people who've left us. So we're very good at what we do in these areas of businesses that require somebody to ring up or contact for a service to come out to them. That's what we do. We don't do very well at anything else. We tried a bit with site-based about health clubs some years back, and that was not good. We just don't have the expertise. So even though some people sort of look at me and say, hey, you're some sort of a business genius and you can franchise anything, the fact of the matter is, I stick to what I'm good at and what I know. And I think one of the dangers in business is to think that you can do different things because you're good at one thing, you're good at something else.
Now, Fabrice has asked here, I've got an idea for a different division. How do I talk to you about it, Jim?
Just email me, jim@jims.net. I'm very easy to contact. I give my email to anybody. In fact, every franchisee and franchisor in Jim's group has has my direct phone number and email address, and they'll ring me or about anything. So just come to me. I would ask you some questions. First of all, what's your business model? Can you show me that an average operator can make at least $60 an hour? And look, the best ones can make multiples of this, especially with workers. But you've got to be able to show that a normal person can make at least $60 an hour, or it's not. There's no point in doing it from our point of view. But by the way, when we talk about pricing, one of the things we hit our franchises with again and again and again: don't be cheap. Look at the opposition and charge at least 10% more. The brand will give you that. So.
Now, Trevor Kirk's gone here. Sorry, Jim, with the question. He's gone, what are typical timeframes? How long would you need to allow for training? And also, how long before you expect to start making a profit?
Okay, depends on the division. If it's something like mowing, the training course is 6 days. It's basically all online at the moment, which is unfortunate. We'd rather be in person. So you have to hold the contract for 2 weeks. Theoretically, you could be for the time you actually decide to go ahead, it could be a fortnight. Mostly it takes a month or so, but that's more to do with the franchisees and, you know, arranging finance and those kind of things. But it's very quick. And there's one of the things we'd show for you if you're interested, but any franchisor will show you, is the unserviced leads list. Have an ask for that one, and we'll show you how much work there is. We have a system called pay for work guarantee, where if you don't make a certain amount of money, usually between $1,200 and $1,500 per week, will pay you to do freebies. But most people don't need to call on that these days.
Maybe do you want to talk about the training for some of the other divisions, Jim, like the fencing and test and tag, because it is.
It is longer, yes. Test and tag is like a 12-day course. These days, mostly online. Fencing is the longest. That's 8 weeks. So that's the longest one. Cleaning is 5 days. Most of them are just a shortest period of time. Honestly speaking, the technical side of business isn't that difficult. The thing we really need to focus on, the thing that makes the difference with success, is business skills. Your levels of customer service, your efficiency, your organizing. We have our own software system called Jim's Jobs, which can help you to run your business better. But and there's a franchisor to support you, which is very important. But basically, it's a fairly quick process.
Now, Fabrice has gone here. For instance, with Jim's Mowing, do you provide customers when you first start?
Yes. Well, actually, there's 2 ways of getting in. You can actually be buy an established business, which is recommended if you can. If you start off with 60 regular clients, you'll never look back. It's really easy to get going. Other times you start with no customers under this pay for work guarantee system, and we just start providing them with leads. But it's not, again, you'd have to look at the individual area, but in most areas there's a surplus of work. We have incredibly valuable work. It's terrible at times looking at how many people are ringing us up desperate to get work done. We just can't get them done. Finding work is not difficult. And it's easy to check too. And this is, again, if you investigate in any division, ask for a list of unserviced leads, which most of them have, and also ring as many franchisees as possible and ask them. I mean, you can spend an hour on the phone and ring 5, 6 people, and you'll very quickly understand how much work there is. It's not our problem at all.
Got any more questions, guys? You can put them in the chat or you can say online.
Someone was asking about new divisions before, which was interesting. There's a fairly good process. What we just need to know is that you've got a business that will provide a good living that doesn't conflict with anything that we're doing. But there's the opportunity, and the actual investment is quite small. To start a new division, you're talking about maybe a $25,000 investment. It's almost nothing, but it's the sweat equity, it's the effort, it's the energy that makes it work.
I've got a question from Delete 2020. What mechanism do you have in place to allow us to see where the demand is and what areas the demand is in?
It's called an unserviced leads list. In fact, if you email me, jim@jims.net, I'll actually send it to you. If you tell me where you are and what division you're interested in, I'll just do a printout on the computer and I'll mail you back all the unserviced leads in that area. I won't, not the detail, of course, because I don't know who they are, but I'll tell you how many they are, or I can tell you what services or what suburbs they're in and those kinds of things too. So very, very easy to check. One of the things I know I've said it before, but if you're going into business with anybody, do your homework. I'm quite astonished how many people will go into a business and they'll spend, it might be a lot of money, $20,000, $25,000, but without spending like a couple of hours just asking. Jim's airline. I've been asked about that many times, I've got to say. But I don't think our business skills will cope with the current situation very well. I'm glad to be in the services, I can tell you that.
Now we've got a question here from Blade. He's gone, what about customers who don't pay? Does a franchise protect you?
Well, we'll certainly help you as far as we can. We'll give you advice on what to do. We do have a debt collection. We've got a service with a debt collection agency, but often it's a matter of following up. One of the things we're developing in this program called Jim's Jobs, and it'll be a few months yet, but we're going to have a system that will actually allow you to constantly hit automatically the clients who don't pay. We don't have much. We don't have a lot of problems with it. I mean, bad payers would be less than 1%. People don't usually fail to pay the pool guy. They might stiff the big companies, but the little guy, they don't tend to. But we just tend to chase them and follow up and advise you what to do. Use a debt collector, whatever. If they're a company, we can actually we can have them listed so that they have their credit rating ruined if they don't pay. But with individuals, it's a little tougher. But rarely, it's not a big problem in our industry. Mostly, it's a fairly quick. People pay, and they tend to pay fairly promptly.
Now, Trevor Kirk's gone with this is a good question, Trevor. Do you try and match people to certain fields that perhaps suit them better?
There's one very simple rule. And if anybody inquires about a franchise and they don't know what franchise they're interested in, they put them through to me and then I ring them. And I'll ask one question, and one question only. I said, what do you like doing? What do you enjoy doing? Do you like working outside? Do you like working inside? Would cleaning suit you? Does pool care suit you? Does pest control? Would you like to be the sort of a macho thing, like getting up trees, which is very good earner, but you have to have a good head for heights? Do you like driving? So maybe skip bins. What do you enjoy doing? Now, I can tell you which divisions make the most per hour. There's divisions like skip bins and antennas, which are very lucrative, but they're based on the work isn't quite so secure as it is for something like mowing or cleaning or dog wash. But at the same time, what we find again and again, that the best division is the one that you love. Because if you love what you do, you'll tend to be good at it, and then you'll tend to grow. And really, even the lowest learning divisions, like something like cleaning is probably hourly rate-wise will be one of the more competitive divisions. Some of our wealthiest actual franchisees and franchisors are in that division because it's so big. So I'd say the great opportunity, but do what you love.
Now, I've got a question here from Hab Tamariam. So if I mispronounced that, it says, what is the average income of a Jim's Mowing franchisee monthly?
We think, look, bear in mind, I don't know, but we think the great majority are making at least $2,000 per week, which means after allowing for tax and so forth, they're probably making about $80,000 a year. But that's just a guess. I would suggest that you actually ring and talk to people. The point of it is too, there's a wild variation. There are people who struggle to make $1,500 a week, and there's people who make, who are making millions a year. But if you think about it, I mean, just to give you an idea, and I'll just speak in terms of if you can understand charging, to mow a typical lawn these days, depending on the city, would probably be about $50. Now, with edging, that'll take you around about 35 minutes, but you allow time for things like collecting money from the client and so forth. If you do an extra like gutter clearing, it's a lot better. Now, you have to have proper harness and stuff these days, but you charge like $120 for a job that take you about 3/4 of an hour. So, and these are wild figures, and some people would charge a lot more, some people might charge less, but that's roughly where it is. So the point of it is, when I was out mowing lawns myself, I would typically do about 12 jobs a day. And so you can work out from that. And that wasn't difficult. I could show you my diary, actually. 12 jobs a day, so even at $50 a job, you're making $600 a day, $3,000 a week. But I was quite good at what I did. But all the same, I mean, you can mow 12 lawns a day. It's not difficult. I'm actually astonished some people don't make more than they do. It really is surprising.
Here we go. One from Trevor Kirk goes, how do you maintain the allocated zone or work areas of each franchise to avoid conflict? Okay,
what happens is every franchise, good question, every franchisee gets a territory where they get right of first refusal. Now, they don't have to take territory. Sometimes franchisees, a lot of franchisees don't take any work at all for months on end. But you get your territory. Now, if a job comes outside of territory, what the system does is look at all the franchisees in the who are down for that suburb, and everybody specifies exactly what suburbs and what services they want. It's all done by the computer, and you can just log in and you can change that. So the system will look and say, okay, there's 3 other people. The territory holder doesn't want it, or there's no territory holder, but there's 3 people who could look at it. So the system does various things. First of all, it looks at who's had the least jobs over the past 3 days. So it tries to be even. If they're exactly the same, there could be a bit of a bias towards somebody with the better star rating, the service rating, which is something that's very important to us. But apart from that, it says who's the closest to it, and it gives it to them. So it tries to make it roughly even. But I'd say conflict over jobs is not a problem, because most of the time there's more work than anybody can handle. So there's usually jobs going begging, especially this year.
Any more questions, guys? If you want to type in the type box.
I would suggest too that if you're interested at all, just do some research. One of the things we are actually quite open to is that we don't mind people doing our training courses and not signing up. There's no commitment to that. So one of the things I'd suggest to somebody who wants, even interested in starting their own franchise, come to us, do our training. It only costs you, the whole thing, franchisee and franchise or training, might cost about $1,500. And you could even just look at it and set up your own system. In fact, of those who do franchise or training, quite a few don't get through the course because we look at them and say, you're not ready for it, not up to it. So we don't mind you investigating. We're not scared of people learning our trade secrets.
Now we got one from Hayden here. How did you market the business? What sort of problem, so what sort of platform did you engage with? Now these days, social media is a massive platform, but can vary. What did you use?
Well, in the beginning, I used leaflets, and then I used local papers and yellow pages. It was really simple in those days. I can tell you, life was much more simple from a marketing point of view, which Joel can tell you because he's our head of marketing. These days, obviously, yeah, we're online massively. It changes. Honestly, it changes from month to month almost. You've got, we use a lot of Facebook these days, very successful for us. Obviously, AdWords. The business of actually getting your site to rank is very, very complex. We've actually got a team, a full-time video team of 2 people run by Joel, which does videos, which put them onto our websites to help them to rank better, because the more good stuff we have on the website, the more Google likes it. So we have a lot of effort to get our websites to rank. That's a very big thing. Most cries just come from the internet, but social media systems in other ways, we look at, I'm not even a great expert in that, but Joel and other people are extremely good at that. But yeah, social media is huge, very, very, very fast moving and changeable. Google algorithms change almost on a weekly basis. You've got to follow them very carefully. But the great thing about having a business with 4,000 odd people is that we've got a lot of people who are trying different things all the time, and we share stuff. In fact, if you look on the site, you'll see a whole lot of things. Like you'll probably see some. Do we have those franchisor videos, Joel? Can people see those?
Which ones, the franchisor interviews?
Yes.
We made most of them private because they talk about specific information, but we can make some of it public. Yes, we did have some interviews with Hader and Sharon and stuff on there.
So we regularly interview our top people and we ask them what they're doing. So one of the good things about a franchise type system, it's not just the fact that we've got 4,000 franchisees. We've got several hundred franchisees, and they're all trying different things. And then we communicate and we talk to each other and we pass messages. Oh, this is working. Somebody, for example, said that Spotify is a great source of advertising because they tried it, and it only cost about 2 cents per ad. So we're always trying different things. Seek Commercial. Somebody's been there's a deal that we worked out with them. This is for finding franchisees. So we're always sharing ideas around the place. It's a fascinating. I find it bewildering. I'm a bit of an old codger myself. I'm 68, so it's beyond me. I don't even use Facebook, but I've got emails. But it's a wonderful area. Actually, it's kind of exciting because I would say there's no time in the history of the world where it hasn't been better opportunities for people to go into business with nothing and be hugely successful, because the world is changing so fast. So the opportunities are there. The established companies are falling like 9 pins. All the big companies in the world these days, the ones that didn't exist 40 years ago. So, and there's more opportunities, and business is really fun. I have to say, I know it's scary. It's really frightening, but I just feel so thankful that I didn't become an academic, because what I hear from that environment is awful. It's bureaucratic and infighting. I have a wonderful, enjoyable life. I love it. I never intend to retire. I'll be going for the next 20 years. And don't scowl, Joel. I'm not intending to retire anytime soon, because it's so much fun and there's so much opportunity. I just look as we're just getting started. It's just fun. It's
Now, Jim, do you want to talk about one thing that no one probably might know about is the pay for work guarantee? Because that helps a lot of people make because as you said, business is scary for people going from employment you might be employed for 10 years to doing your own business. What's that pay for work guarantee safety net? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I did discuss that briefly before, but basically what it means is if you don't have enough work to start with to make your minimum level, as I said, usually $1,200 per week, which is a lot less than most franchisees make, you just go and offer freebies. And you can start with your neighbors, your friend, you can do it for your mother, you can local shopkeeper, anybody, just go and do a free service. And then you give the details, name, address, phone number to your franchisor, and he or she pays you. So, but the vast majority of franchisees these days never need to claim on it. I had one claim recently for dog wash, but that was the biggest I've had for ages. It just doesn't happen. It's actually, look, I'm not trying to, I suppose I'm not going to push it too hard, but if you talk to people who are in the business, and again, I suggest do your research, do your homework. People have an idea about business as being very chancy. In fact, your own business is about the most secure thing possible because the only person that can fire you is you. And you people, I ring up people who've been, who've reached major milestones like 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I ring them personally and congratulate them. And the story here again is just what a great, I'm glad they got out of employment and got into their own business. And some of them actually were in a situation like you. You're in a position where you've had a great career. You always thought it was going to be something you do for the rest of your life. But then they had something come along. There was a recession. These things happened. They were thrown out of work. So they looked around and said, what can I do? I can mow lawns. I can clean. I can do this. And they said, it's fantastic. The lifestyle is great. I really recommend that you talk to people as much as possible. And we're not biased. We're talking about just ring up the people who are in the business and ask them, how secure are you? What was it like? Why did you leave a secure, steady job? And why did you go into business for yourself? And what they'll generally tell you is that the income that they make is at least as good. But what they've got now they never had before is lifestyle, the flexibility, the ability to work the hours that you want to. If you talk to men, one of the things they'll most often say to you is, I see my kids growing up. I never could in the past. Because in the past, I'd be working in the city, long hours. Often they had very great jobs, very prestigious jobs, but they'd spend, they'd work for 8 or 9 hours a day, then they'd be commuting for another 2 hours, and at the weekend they're too tired. Now they see their kids, they get on with their wife. It's a wonderful thing.
Sorry, Jim, we've got a question from Alison, which is, how have COVID restrictions impacted on work, particularly in Vic?
Well, it hasn't affected work. It's just basically the Premier stopped us working. That's our problem. The work's been huge. The only divisions that had some impact would be test and tag, building inspections. They've had a little bit of a tough time. A lot of them are doing work in other divisions, the overflow work from other divisions like mowing and so forth. And cleaning has had some impact. Some are making more money than ever. But what's affected us lately, which is pretty horrifying, is that the Premier threw entire Melbourne task force out of work, which I resent, because the council gardeners are doing exactly the same jobs. So why are we? In fact, the original guidelines said that we were okay. So we're pretty confident that's going to be gone in 3 weeks. So it's not really a factor. But it's annoying, I can tell you that.
Is there any more question, guys? Feel free to type them in. We'll leave it open for another minute, Jim, just to get people to type something in if they're going to type it in. And we'll make this replay available as well. I'll put it on and make the link available to everyone.
It is fun, people. I tell you what, you might not believe it, but I love what I do. And you've got to enjoy what you do. That is such an important thing. Don't get too hung up on money. I think that's a mistake. If you love what you do and you have a passion for doing it well, money tends to come. If you have your heart in what you do, it's putting the money first is a bad idea. It tends to undermine things like service to franchisees, service to clients when you put money first. So we try very hard not ever to do that. And I was just for yourself. Look at what you want to do. Look at a passion. Maybe there's something you want to do in the past. Maybe you like trees or you love gardens or something that just appealed to you. If you had a passion and interest of some kind, and you can follow that and do what you love during the day. And I know it's strange, but people do look down on manual work. And I think it's such a pity. because the opportunities are there and it's so much fun. And, you know, obviously I've been a bit more successful than many, but still a lot of people would agree with me on that one.
Now, where can people find out more information, Jim, just to, if they want to inquire about a particular division?
www.gyms.net.
Is that,
and if anybody wants to just email me directly, jim@gyms.net, I'm extremely easy to contact. I work it very close. I talk to my franchisees every day. I actually personally check through almost every complaint in the company every day. I'm very, very closely interested in what goes on, and interested in giving great service to customers, because that means we're going to get lots and lots of work for our franchisees. And as our services got better, the leads have just risen and risen and risen far faster than we can cope with them. But always happy to talk to anybody, particularly about new divisions, I must say. If you've got an idea for a new division, or you're interested in some kind of a leadership role, there are some great opportunities within gyms.
Oh, guys, we'll leave it there unless there's any more questions.
I just wanted to say thank you, and we'll also put some information onto the secondary employment and the career transition page as well. That'll link you directly back to the gym site as well. So thank you so much for your time today, Jim and Joel.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.